It is December 7th, 2017. Time for another update. It's been a couple weeks since the last one, and progress has been steady. Getting very close to an alpha. Hoping to have that by the end of an alpha release by the end of the year. But everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the nose. So we'll see how what the reality brings. But let me talk about a few of the things I've been working on the last few weeks. The biggest two is the listing manager and the client governor. And here are the GitHub URLs if you want to check it out for yourself. But I'm going to bring those up here. So if you go to the RPI OVN repository on GitHub, you'll find this Docker Connect CMS P2P VPS repository that I talked about last time. You can go to this listing manager directory, and that's where the listing manager lives. And here in the README is a lot of what I talked about in the last video presentation I did of the Docker software stack. And there's a rough draft on installation. And let's see. Oh, there's this specification directory, and this is where the specifications for the listing manager lives, and basically for this whole repository. But I talk about the SSH tunnel server, the local tunnel server, and then this listing manager. And this is a flow chart of the workflow, and kind of if you want like a 10,000-foot explanation of the process of the P2P VPS marketplace and how it's going to work, especially with OpenBazaar. This is it, and that's basically the purpose of the listing manager is to fulfill orders as they come in. Let me just click on this thing and get a little better view. When the client devices go offline and they have listings on the OpenBazaar marketplace, the listing manager removes those listings. And similarly, if the device is rented out, the listing manager is going to prorate and refund the difference, since it's assumed that it's an unplanned power outage or outage, and refund the prorated amount to the renter. And so those are some of the things the listing manager is going to do. So that's basically done. Like the last 2 weeks, I basically went from 0 to done on this one, and pretty stoked about that. In a very similar concept is the client governor, and that the listing manager runs on the server. The client manager is going to run on the client, and the specifications for that is here. So basically, the main place specifications are going to live is in the P2P VPS server, even though these are about the client. And here's sort of the governor. It's also integral to this workflow. And here's just a quick bullet point list of what it does, and what its main purpose is. And probably, in the last presentation, I displayed this server stack of software and how it works. And this is kind of the idea behind the governor. So in this stack, you can see the listing manager. It's going to live in its own Docker container, and it's going to communicate with all the other pieces of the server. And then on the client, on the Raspberry Pi or whatever the client hardware happens to be, there's also going to be a similar software stack where on the outside you're going to have this governor, which the file name for that's going to be P2P VPS client JS. It's a Node application. It's going to run, and it's going to be responsible for registering with the server, getting the login and information and the port that the SSH server is going to run on, and or the connection is going to run on, and then it builds a Docker container from that information and launches the Docker container. And then when the Docker container launches, it runs this application called Client Connect. And so that's running inside, and this is also a Node app so there's basically two Node applications, one inside and one outside the Docker container. And that lets the whole scheme kind of work in terms of hands off. Like the ideal experience that I envision is that a person loads the software on their Raspberry Pi, they plug it in, they put it on the market, and they're done. And it just makes money for them. It just rents out. It basically, as long as they keep it power to it and they keep it connected to the internet, it will just run. And like when one person gets done running it, it'll automatically turn around and relist itself. And that's ideally where I want to get. That's not going to be where I'm at with the alpha, but that's ideally like where it's going to get. Is people should just, I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for people to rent out their Raspberry Pi or whatever computing device they want to rent out, and that's how it's going to work. And this is the software stack that's going to make that happen. So yeah, that's basically the listing manager and the client governor are going to be essential to achieving that vision. And I'm testing them out on the Testnet store. So I'm using OpenBazaar 2.0, and when you launch it, you can do the -T. If you launch it from a command line, you can do that in Windows as well, but typically I run in Linux. And it's the same for Mac. But this -T will launch it on the Bitcoin testnet, so you can use fake coins. So if you want to visit the store, feel free. Here is the OpenBazaar address right here. I'm going to put a link to this. I'm not really ready for people to use it right now, but when I am ready, I'm going to put a link to this on P2P VPS.org and probably .net as well. And so stay tuned for that, because that's probably going to be in the next few weeks. Speaking of which, that's a really good segue into this test network. So this is this is a picture of the testnet. I've got just a handful of Raspberry Pis plugged into a router on my desk. But this is kind of what I envision for like a small scale people who wanna put up the money to buy 4 Raspberry Pis for the sole purpose of renting them out and making some cryptocurrency. This is kind of what I envision it looking like. And so this is how I'm creating the testnet. Is I've got this, basically my internet connection, that connects to the internet, and then in between the Raspberry Pis and the internet, I have this super cheap router that I bought at a thrift store and reflashed with DDWRT or DDWRT. I don't know how it's pronounced, but that's what I'm going to call it. And it's open source software, and it basically turns like, I think that the phrase I've heard coined is it turns your $30 router into a $300 router or whatever, or $6 router into a $600 router or something like that. But it's got some pretty neat features. Mainly, what it's doing though is it's acting as a firewall, and it's isolating my home network from this network. So internet traffic is free to pass through, but anyone renting out the Raspberry Pi is not going to be able to directly access my home network, any of my family or my roommates stuff, because they're going to be blocked by DDR-WRT. And plus, this has some really cool quality of service controls. So for instance, each one of the devices plugged in, and these are Ethernet lines. These aren't Wi-Fi. I turn the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off on the Raspberry Pis. It's really easy to do. I'll have a tutorial on how to do that. And this, so they're hard connected with Ethernet, and they're rate limited to 256 kilobits per second. So I can't, if someone wants to run a BitTorrent server and just serve files all day, that's great, but I don't want it to affect other people connected to my local internet here. So I'm going to rate limit them, and that's a sweet thing that the software does. So this is sort of my vision of a home network that's going to be participating in the P2P VPS. I don't know if it's practical or not. It's practical for me. It's definitely for someone who knows what they're doing. It's cost effective. I could envision people like bundling these together and selling them, as a package for people who aren't as technically savvy. Down the road, this whole bundle would probably cost $250 is my guess. And yeah, so anyways, that's that. This is going to be the test network. So when I'm ready and I make the announcement and I put this link up on .org and .net websites, I'm going to have 3 or 4 devices here. So here's a listing for one of them. I'm going to have a better picture and more descriptions and stuff like that. But you'll go here and you'll click on it and you'll buy it. And when you buy it, like within a few seconds, the order will get fulfilled, and you'll get the login information to log in to the SSH and the subdomain where you'll be able to serve web pages. And I'll probably also open up port 4001 because one of the first applications I'm hoping to do is to allow people to run their own dedicated OpenBazaar servers off of these Raspberry Pis. But there are some issues with that at the application level that need to be dealt with. It's not quite as straightforward as running it off of any other cloud VPS. But I look forward to solving those problems. I think it's a perfect application for this kind of thing. Like a cloud server, anything that's basically low CPU and high storage would work really well. Because the other thing I haven't mentioned is in the client software. Let me just show you, so you don't have to take my word for it. In the client software repository, there is, in the client folder, there's all these subfolders. So the one I'm focusing on right now is the simple, and it's the simplest possible representation of the client software. But the one that most people are going to use is going to be flash storage, and this is not ready for general use. I'm still, like I said, I'm focused on simple. We're going to get this nailed down. But flash storage is going to be the simple with everything set up for a flash drive, and I'm going to encourage 64 gigabyte flash drives, and I'm going to have walkthroughs on how to set up disk level encryption and on it, and so that's the idea, is that each one of these will have 64 gigabyte storage space, so it'll be perfect for serving files of any kind, depending on what the user wants to use it for. And yeah, so let's see, next steps. A couple of these are the same from the last one. I need to update the specifications. I have been pretty diligent about that, but they are, no matter how diligent I am, they are always going to be behind reality. So we're going to try and do that. I haven't done put out any effort on the user interface because I've been focused on the back end on that listing manager and the client governor. I need to Dockerize the listing manager now that it's kind of working. And I need to start doing some integration testing, writing some basic tests to validate an environment. This is all moving towards an alpha. If I get all these done and I write up some documentation, I'm hoping I can drum up enough excitement and give people both the ability to rent out. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention is when these are here, they're going to be for 1 hour. You'll be able to rent them for 1 hour. They'll be on the Bitcoin testnet, so the coins are free. It's not going to cost anything. In practice, I envision them being for a month, but just to kind of speed things up and help people test it and give people something to play with. That's what I'm hoping to do for the alpha, is have them, people can rent them out for an hour using these fake Bitcoins, on the testnet. And then after a couple months of testing that, then I'll probably move it to renting a month and actually doing this for real is kind of what I'm hoping, and that would be the beta. But also I want to get to a point, that's one focal point, but the other focal point, just as important, is getting the server to a point where people with technical background similar to my own would be comfortable trying to install the server software and run their own servers. That's what I really want to see. That's the ultimate goal, is distributed servers, not having any one centralized point of failure. And so yeah, we'll see where it goes. It's going to be pretty exciting. I'm hoping to have the alpha of this coincide, or maybe the beta really coincide with the finalization OpenBazaar is going to be doing with their alternative currencies, because I really need that in place for this whole business idea to be feasible. It needs to be low transaction fees. Like I said, the $5 to $10 range is kind of per month is kind of what I'm thinking everything's going to fall into, because that's kind of naturally where the industry lives right now. And so yeah, we'll see. But it's exciting times. Progress is moving fast, and most importantly, it's moving steady. And that's what I'm hoping to do, because this is just a hobby for me. I'm just doing a few hours in the evening, and looking forward to the day when I can do this full time. But really looking forward to the day when it's not just me working on it, and people are using it, and it's providing value to them. And I'm looking forward to the day that that takes off. Okay, well, so that's today's update, and stay tuned for more.